All right. Episode 72, Feeney Talks with Friends. My name is Eric Feeney, founder and president of Friends of Feeney. I use this podcast, Feeney Talks with Friends, and I talk to wonderful people that are doing great things in the community. And today, ladies and gentlemen, we have a great bunch. We have Ted. How you doing, Ted?
Doing great. How are you, Eric?
Bill.
Excellent.
And Helen.
Amen.
And together, among others, they form the West Hartford Tree Program. Very excited to talk to you. Beautiful spring day, the first full day of spring. So I'm really excited to bring everyone together. I've known Ted for quite some time, being a West Hartford teacher, being our leader, our WHEA union president, wonderful person. And I'm really excited to meet Bill and Helen. How you guys doing?
Great.
Well.
Great.
How's spring treating you?
Wonderful. I'd like to be outside right now, but thank you for having us. This is a good reason to be inside.
Yeah. Episode 72. You know 72 is like room temperature, considerable room temperature. Where do you keep your heat at?
I'm like a 67 guy, I think.
Me
Yeah.
too.
68,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the Bulls in 1996 with 72 and 10. And then 72 is par for a course of 18. And then 72 means good luck in the ham radio, shorthand. I looked all that up, 72.
Wow.
And a quick review of 71, Matt Conway from the RiseUP Group. Have you ever seen the beautiful murals down in the library or in West Hartford?
Yes.
That is the
yeah.
RiseUP Group, and Matt Conway was a wonderful guest. We talked at the Community Exchange on 91 Memorial. It used to be a furniture place, but now it's being used for RiseUP. So check it out, episode 71. Back to 72, Tree Program. Who wants to start? Helen?
Yeah, I'll start. So I'm Director of Leisure Services and Social Services for the town of West Hartford, but we also work with a lot of community groups and a lot of volunteers. And one of the very exciting things that's going on in West Hartford over the last couple of years is really a great interest in trees. And we have started a group of people, a loose collaboration, if you will, of a bunch of different people from different groups. And we're calling ourselves the Tree Action Group, the TAG team. And Ted is part of that tag team with the West Hartford Tree Project, that you can find information on Facebook. And Bill is a volunteer who's got some background in marketing and writing and photography, and really just things in a naturalist by heart, I think. And so we're really pulling all of different people, some colleagues from Town Hall, like our tree warden, John Phillips, is Director of Public Works, Doug Jackson, who runs Westmoor Park, which is our kind of the hub of our ecology education program in West Hartford. So we've been pulling all these people together to talk about trees and about ways to increase the tree coverage in our town, to kind of analyze, what the tree coverage is like, how we can make it better, how we can educate our community about the importance of trees.
Yeah. Trees are good. I read Ronni Newton's article. Ronni.
Right.
Very good.
Episode 39. Check out Ronni, was on the podcast. And Ted, you guys said some really cool things. Shade. One was great for stress.
Absolutely.
I thought that was great. Stress. There was a couple more.
Oh, there's got to be at least 15 good reasons to have a good tree canopy in a town. You've got shade to cool you in the summer. You've got the windbreak in the winter offered by the trees. You've got noise reduction, stress reduction. You've got
Privacy.
Water flowing in.
Runoff.
is reduced. You've got support of native insects and therefore native birds. I mean, the list goes on and on. There's really no downside to having a good, healthy tree canopy in a town. I'm sure I'm forgetting a few things.
Water retention would be the entire system of the tree.
Yep.
Acts as a natural reservoir, whereas a lawn acts as a natural disperser of moisture.
Yep.
Okay, so just think about if you want to save water, if you want to help the planet, a tree is a beautifully wonderful way to do so.
Yeah.
And let's not forget the aesthetics, the property values. When you read about historic neighborhoods, when they're written up by architects, they always mention the mature trees because they just add an element to a neighborhood that increases property values. And
That's the one I found most interesting. Property value, like a tree I honestly, on my street, I'm in my 13th year living on my street, and when I used to walk up from New Britain Ave on Bramley, it was canopy. It was like dark. But now, so many, as the years went on, trees have been coming down, and now it's so wide and bright.
Yeah.
I noticed that right away. I wish I took a picture 13 years ago until today. You're saying it happens everywhere, right? Because of the weather, the storms, bugs, whatever. But trees are coming down.
Absolutely. There's
lot
certain
of
streets,
stressors.
a lot of stressors. There's certain streets where it's really obvious. To me, I live 1 block over from Pleasant Street, and that used to be a tunnel of trees. And I think the turning point for me, when I really started noticing it, was the Halloween storm of 2011. The huge ice storm. We had so many big mature trees that came down because they were still leafed out. It was October. They had the leaves, all that weight, and it broke so many trees. But then more stressors. We've had multiple years of droughts. We've got invasive pests. We've got invasive plants, and we have some just wholesale removal of trees. Sometimes people are just bored and they want a new look, and they take a tree down. So there's all these things that are accumulating to reduce our tree canopy, and it's been happening for a while.
So that inspired you. What you're being a scientist, not a scientist, a science teacher.
Sure.
Excuse me, science teacher inspired you as well.
Yeah, I mean, my wife and I are both science teachers. We moved here in around 2000, and part of the reason we moved here was because of the beautiful trees and the parks. I'm sorry.
And your leisure services. So
Right,
that's how
so
you
that's
got
the
involved.
park, the Parks
Social
and Rec.
services and-
Right. So I think a lot of us were, as Ted said, we were alarmed by the loss of all these trees happening. And oftentimes, many trees that are all planted at the same time are all going to die at the same time. And so part of what we wanted to do is analyze where were we 10 years ago, probably more trees than we have now. Where are we now, and where will we be in 10 years? And in order to inform that decision and that choice, we wanted to really do an analysis of the trees in our community. So we've set aside some funding to do a tree canopy study. We'll probably hire an outside company to help us do that. But why would we do that? Well, it's to capture a point in time. It's probably going to tell us things that we already know, like we need more trees in the southeast quadrant of town. It's a more industrial area. There's a lot more pavement. But we can work with residents, with town parks, and with business owners to see about planting more trees, but also what kinds of trees, right? So we want biodiversity, so that it's not all the same tree. It's not all the same honey locusts in the West Hartford Center. That it's when they redo that, they want to put in different kinds of trees, so that there's no one insect can't come in and take them all down, for example.
Gotcha.
So one of those things is to do research, but it's also to educate our community about how important trees are. And I think that's where the Seedling Project and the West Hartford Tree Project that Ted started with some friends and his wife and Cindy have really expanded and involved a lot of people, a lot of students, and a lot of just homeowners to be able to plant trees.
I think it was great. I know you reached out to me. We were talking either email or text on how to raise money or start a GoFundMe, and I suggested not the GoFundMe. And you were like, you had a goal of $1,000. I'm like, oh, you're going to get that.
It was amazing.
Easily went over that. Surpassed it easily.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of buy-in. That's the great thing about, I find with Friends of Feeney, it's a very supportive community. West Hartford, if people see there's a problem or there's a way to people to help, it's very generous and thoughtful people in this community. It makes it a special place. So I'm sure you're seeing it too with the tree program.
Absolutely. So we're in year 3 right now, and each year we've raised enough money to easily buy 1,000 or more trees. This year, we raised $4,000 in a couple of weeks, and then we were matched with a $3,000 grant from Sustainable Connecticut. So this is awesome. So now this year, for the first time, we're able to buy trees that are a little bit older, 4 or 5 feet tall, 2-gallon pots, potted trees. Slowly but surely, this project is getting bigger and bigger, and hopefully more of our trees will survive. With the seedlings, with the bare root seedlings, a 50% survival rate is pretty good, actually. But the older the tree is, the more mature it is, the more likely it is to survive. So
you're getting already with the roots already growing, and you got to dig a hole and
some
have options.
potted. Okay, the majority will be in the form of a bare root seedling,
Gotcha.
The root is about that long, which is good because if you have a little pot, they cut the root off.
Yep.
So you get the full root, and then you get something on top of it, okay? There is a difference too. With potted trees, people tend to put them in the ground, maybe water them, and forget them, okay? When you plant a bare root seedling, it's kind of your baby, okay? And you want to nurture it through its first year. And then the following spring, when you see those leaves on it, you're like, whoa, wait a minute, I did something pretty good here, okay? And then 2 years, and then 3 years. There's more buy-in with bare root seedlings for a certain part of our town, folks.
Is it
okay?
like out of sight, out of mind? You see this thing
You know,
hanging out of the grass, you know to
yeah.
water it, and then if you just put a seed there, you may forget about it? Is
Well,
that something?
you're going to see it there,
Yep,
okay?
number one.
I just think you take better care of bare root seedlings, whereas with potted plants, you tend to put them in the ground, and that's where you water them and forget them.
All right.
And if it dies, it dies, okay? The bare
And
root
I think
seedling.
I think it's neat that Ted and Carolyn started this with the seedlings, 1,000 seedlings. Imagine 1,000 seedlings. And the leftovers were given to the parks, and we planted a whole bunch of them. And some of them didn't take, right? The deer come and chew them off, or somebody weed whacked them by mistake. The second year, we tried again, 1,000 seedlings. Imagine. And we've had a much better success rate because we figured out what we did wrong the first year. But the third year now, there's some options for people. So it's just a better way of engaging. And maybe these older trees have, if they're cared for right, have a little bit of a leg up, if you will, on survival. So that's what we're banking on.
And we're shooting for more biodiversity. So, I mean, I'll quickly go through the kinds of trees that we're offering this year, because biodiversity is key. The more plants you have growing, the more insects you're going to support, the more different types of birds you're going to sustain. But real quickly, the potted trees this year are the yellow birch, black oak, black gum Tupelo, red maple, eastern red cedar, gray birches, and chokecherry. And unfortunately, or fortunately, all of those are now claimed. They've all been spoken for. But we do have the bare root seedlings, which are about, a foot and a half tall. We have plenty of these left, so people can still order them. American basswood, red oak, one of my favorite trees. It's probably the tree that supports more variety of insects than any other tree in New England. We have 22 red oak seedlings left. Sycamore, sugar maple, Douglas fir, eastern white pine, all still available. And I just want to mention Eversource also, because for past 3 years, they've kicked in about 200 plugs, which are basically like seedlings. And Eversource is trying to promote the planting of trees and shrubs that don't get above 30 feet for obvious reasons. They would love to see more foliage that's not growing up into the power lines. Mm-hmm. So we gladly accept those, and we give them away along with all the other plugs, and it's a good deal. It's a good partnership.
So there's really two kinds of trees that they're offering. There's the overstory trees, the big trees, the red oak. A mature red oak is like a smorgasbord for migrating warblers, because lots of insects are there and they're all pollinating, and the birds just arrive and they're just exhausted and they're starving, and it's just like an all-you-can-eat buffet. So those are just wonderful. But then it's the understory trees that also really help keep the ground moist. They help reduce runoff and erosion. And so both kinds of trees are important in our community.
Let me just, red oak, what minute are we on? So he's gonna throw in a picture of a red oak. All right, 14, red oak. And I also printed out, and I see that, we need to share that. If people need a tree, you need to go to the Facebook page, and it's the West Hartford Tree Program on Facebook.
Project,
West Hartford Tree Project.
Project.
That's fine.
Project.
West Hartford Tree.
Say that 5 times fast. And you also shared a number. Can I share the number that's on the Facebook page? It's an 860 number. It might be your own.
That's my cell number.
It's on the Facebook page.
Yeah, that's fine.
And then
That's
there's
fine, yeah.
a Google form for the West Hartford seedling request. Mm-hmm. And I see a lot of them are sold out, so that's exciting.
Yeah.
And the red oak. So yeah, we'll put a picture on, but you mentioned red oak. That was the first tree.
We have a lot of red oak left. We
A lot
have
of red oak.
Douglas fir, which technically is native to North America, but it's not native to New England.
It's not native to New England, but it will thrive in the right conditions, and West Hartford has those conditions.
Yeah, I mean, so basically we've got red oak, sycamore, which is a fantastic tree, Douglas fir, and eastern white pine, the white pine. So that's what we have left at this point in time.
But what about for seedlings?
Those are all seedlings.
Those are all the
What
buried
about the
seedlings.
ones in the pot? Any
They're
of those
already
left?
spoken.
They're all
Wow,
claimed,
you guys-
unfortunately, yeah.
Man.
So if
Over
folks, Eric, if folks want them, tell them to jump on that Facebook page real quick. Just get your reservation in, and you don't have to pick it up until April 22nd. And when you go on April 22nd, our various staff will be there, okay? Answer questions about planting, about location, virtually anything. There'll be people able to answer your viewers' questions about
Nice.
where to plant this tree and how to plant this tree.
Yeah, when you're planting a tree, it's all about location, location, location. So we have the mantra that we learned from John Phillips, our tree warden, is right tree, right place. So we don't want to plant, a copper beech right next to your house because it needs to be in a big field. But there are things that you can plant, some distance from your house. You just have to be aware of how big it's going to grow and what its canopy, what its shade is going to be like.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, and you'll teach everyone that, and that's pickup is Saturday, April 22nd, 134 Woodrow Street.
124?
134.
Oh, 134.
134, okay.
134. I hope I said that. And it's
And
the
there's-
West Hartford Tree Project on Facebook. I'll put a link on the podcast.
Thank you.
And there's one other opportunity to learn about right tree, right place, and how to plant a tree. Westmoor Park is holding a seminar on April 1st.
Nice.
And that's, you can go to Westmoor Park.
And that's 12 to 2, Westmoor Park. And as a teacher, third grade teacher, I absolutely love Westmoor Park. We go to a field trip every year,
Yep.
and the kids rotate and learn about habitats and adaptations, and we look for bugs, and we go on a hike. It's just a wonderful program and a wonderful place. So I'm so
Yeah, it's-
happy that they're a part of it, and they've
Yep.
been doing wonderful things in the West Hartford
Yeah.
community for years.
Yes,
so.
they have.
Let me jump in on that. So the person who's facilitating the workshop on April 1st is Ginny Patson. And she's from the Connecticut Conservation District, that's our source for our trees. And every year they have a plant sale. It's their main fundraiser. So we're buying our trees from them. So if there's someone who has their heart set on a potted tree or one of these particular species that we're sold out of, they can get online and look up North Central Conservation District, and they can buy trees
Yeah.
directly from. They won't be free, but they're really reasonably priced, and they
I'll put
can
a
buy
link for
trees.
that. What is it, North?
It's the North Central Conservation District, and they have a plant sale. It's live right now, and people order and then they go pick it up in Bloomfield. There's a farm in Bloomfield.
And is Ginny a part of that, or Ginny's just Westmoor Park?
Ginny works for them, and that's a nonprofit, the Connecticut Conservation District, and their job is conservation of the environment in Connecticut. And the state is divided up into different districts.
Great.
Yeah.
And how many times have you interacted with Ginny? Have you been the whole 4 years? Or
We
3
went
years?
and walked. Well, so she's new to the conservation district, but we've been getting our trees from them for the last 2 years. But I met her recently. We went and walked Westmoor, and we kind of figured out the tree planting workshop, what we're going to do. So that's going to be great.
Nice.
Yeah.
One of the really exciting things that Bill is doing with Westmoor Park is helping it to become an arboretum. So we're doing all the paperwork and all the certification that's necessary to put Westmoor Park on the map as an arboretum. But there's another wonderful organization, a statewide organization called Notable Trees, and Bill is working with identifying some trees that are really spectacular examples of a particular species and nominating them to be part of the Notable Trees of Connecticut list. But as he's going around, he's also been in each park and identified really good examples. We're calling them specimen trees of various varieties. And he's putting together a map of trees that people can visit when they go to each park. So as we get further along, we're going to have signage that will welcome you to the park, also have a map of the park, but then also there'll be little icons that show, oh, there's some trees, and those trees will be named, they'll have labels, and you can go around and learn about the different species of trees. And that's thanks to Bill's
Bill.
volunteer time.
That's great, Bill. I noticed that at Westmoor Park on the hike, they're labeled. or
There's
identify?
currently about 31 labels on the trees in
Yep.
Westmoor. The proposed arboretum has 64 points of signage interest and 62 species of trees. So it's a fairly big expansion of what is already there. And it'll be kind of hard to go from one sign to the next sign without being able to see it. So if people want to do that loop, you've already done it,
Yeah.
okay? If you want to do that little loop around the core area that the Hunter family donated to Westmoor Park and the town, you're going to be within striking distance of a signed tree, okay, and a story, because we
pretty
intend
neat.
to do self-guided tours and guided tours. There's only one arboretum in this area right now, and that's Elizabeth Park.
Yeah.
And so Westmoor will be the
Well,
second.
let's break down that word.
Arboretum.
What's that? If you were to explain that to a second grader, per se.
A place specifically for the study and appreciation of trees.
Boom.
So
Got
that's
it.
why
And woody plants. I wouldn't say that to the second grader.
Arbor Day is a day
trees, yep.
that we celebrate trees,
Yep.
and that's also in
Yep.
April. But so the word arbor is French or for
Yeah.
Latin for tree.
Yeah.
So
An
that's why
arborist
an
is a
arboretum
person. Yeah.
is a place where
Gotcha.
you look at trees just like you'd have a herbarium or a terrarium. It's an
Gotcha.
arboretum.
Yep. I use my clues, but
you go.
got it. Arborist. I'm an arborist.
Oh, speaking of arborists, we are working with Liz Pang, who owns Luna Tree Care, which is like 3 blocks that way. And if there's anyone who orders a tree and they're not able to dig their own hole or don't want to, Liz has offered to plant, like the whole works, like dig the hole,
Is
plant
it on New
it.
Britain Ave? You pointed over here. Or New Park.
Let's see.
Or down.
I think she's
She's in the Elmwood area.
Okay.
Yeah. Am I pointing the wrong way?
that way.
Nice.
But anyway, she'll do it for $50, which is a great deal, I think.
And then back to, like, say you missed out and you really want a tree. What are the prices? Like, I really like, per se, what's the one you mentioned
So,
earlier?
the
A
red
oak.
oak,
Say
yeah.
I want a red oak.
Okay.
What are the costs on a
So
red
if you look up the Connecticut Conservation District, look up their plant sale, and if they have red oak, then it's probably going to be like $20
Oh, wow.
for like a 4-foot tall potted red oak, if they've got them, which is a
All right.
deal. If you've looked at nurseries lately, that's a steal.
Nice.
Yeah, and it's fast growing tree.
And it's a large tree at maturity, 75 to 80 feet. Canopy, probably 30 feet in each direction, minimal, okay? So, yeah, don't plant it next to your outdoor air conditioning unit.
And how do you guys feel for doing all this work and possibly not seeing the benefits of it because it takes so long? What's the thought on that?
So people often say, when is the right time to plant a tree? The right time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next right time to plant a tree is today. I like to quote the Nobel Prize winning poet W.S. Merwin, who used to be the poet laureate of the United States. He said in one of his poems, "On the last day of the world, I would want to plant a tree." So that's, I think, what we feel, that we can't have too many trees, but we want to have really good trees, right tree, right place.
And I'd add to that.
That's a great quote.
It's a very far thinking ahead type of thing. So the delayed gratification is built into this, okay? And the way I kind of put it together in my head is to think that if 50 years ago we started thinking about climate change and acting on global warming 50 years ago, we would be way ahead of the curve right now, okay? So in terms of reforestation, because that's what we're dealing with, okay, globally, and in the United States across almost every single region, and reforestation is that same type of a long-term commitment to the environment. And I have to say, I have been so proud to see West Hartford residents step up to the plate, because Ted and Carolyn got their hands on 1,000 trees and seedlings, but 247 people went out there and dug them into the ground and took care of them.
Yeah.
And then another 250 showed up the next year, or 300, whatever it was. And that's really, so we're not alone.
I think it's
with
amazing.
this,
No, it's great.
Thinking ahead beyond your lifetime. These trees will outlive us, okay? Even
That's
with
the
a
hope.
very long lifespan, they're going to easily outlive us.
It's pretty neat.
And is it true that the roots and the canopy go out the same distance?
It's
Yeah.
commonly referred to that way. The root system, the actual core of the root system is primarily within the drip line of the tree. That's the spread where the water drips down.
Gotcha.
But there's actually micro roots that extend quite a bit. Some trees have roots 3 times past the canopy, but those can
Generally
be damaged.
speaking, it's
Yeah,
where
pretty
the-
much it's
where
right
the
under the
rain
tree.
drips.
Much
Nice.
shallower though than most people think, except for the taproot.
Gotcha.
You ever see when they come over?
Yeah.
And sometimes
Yeah. It's like, yeah, it's
you're
like
like, no
still
wonder,
standing up
no
again,
wonder
yeah.
it fell down. It didn't have any roots. Yeah.
No, it's great. Give you guys a lot of credit. I'm here to support you. We'll share it on the Facebook page. I
Appreciate
might
it.
get some seedlings.
Please do.
We
Please
have a
do.
tree in our front yard. We named it Steve. And the kids were twins, and we take a picture every first day of school. We take a picture on the door, in front of the door, and then in front of the tree. And we've been doing it for 14 years. And a lot of neighbors have been cutting down their front trees. And they're like, Dad, don't you cut down Steve. And Steve might have like a squirrel hole in it, which may be a tunnel, because maybe you guys can help me, but the hole,
Not looking good.
and like it's tan or losing color where this hole is. And there's squirrels going in and out, mushrooms grow out of it, so something's not
Yeah.
right. So Steve
So
might have to calm down.
mushrooms is not a good indicator.
Yeah, Steve might.
The
Steve
whole,
might be a little worried.
I would probably prepare the young ones for.
It's gonna be a tough
When
tough
my
loss.
boys were little, we planted a tree for their first communion, and all 3 are still there. So it is a nice tradition to plant a tree in honor of someone or in honor of an occasion. It is a nice
Yeah.
tradition.
So Steve might have to go.
Yeah.
Or he's gonna go on my house. And we don't want that either. I haven't named the house yet, but
There you
Stevie.
go. There you go.
I think I'm looking at this
Stevie.
this red
Or
oak.
maybe they can
That
rename
red
it.
oak is pretty big though in front of my front house.
But
And
it's going to take decades before it gets
True.
to a problem size. So
Oh, so I'll plant it and then not worry about it,
it's
right?
not going to be your problem.
Hey, whoever owns my house in 50, 60 years, you'll deal with
Oaks
the red
are a
oak,
strong
Steve
tree.
Jr.
I think there's a lot of fear out there after the Halloween storm, and I think there's a lot of misplaced fear. You hear about a branch coming down and injuring someone in Massachusetts, and you think to yourself, oh my God, my tree might be next. But I would like to see people conserving healthy, mature trees. They are removing way more carbon dioxide from the atmosphere than any seedling ever can. The mature trees are doing so much more for the environment. Personally, I don't think they should be cut down unless they're unhealthy. And then if they have to be cut down, they should be replaced with 4 or 5 or 6 younger ones, you know?
There's also a problem that is specific to West Hartford and suburban areas that developed in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, and then post-World War II, all right? And as you drive around our town, if you know trees, okay, you don't even have to look at the houses, because ranches tell you a certain story and other 2-story houses tell you a completely different. You don't have to look at them. Just look at the trees. And I can tell you that the house was planted in 1930, 35. How do you know that, okay? It has a mature pin oak in the front yard. Well, they didn't start planting pin oaks until the 20s. The bad thing is they only live 100 years. And if you do the math, okay, 100 years ago
Okay.
is right about now. So those big massive pin oaks, when the Isaias storm, okay, came through and knocked down 20 trees, mature, large trees in Elizabeth Park. 11 of them were pin oaks. Now, rain, they're shallow rooted, they will fall down in wet soil. But this is repeated time and time again because when these neighborhoods were developed, the developers put in fast growing trees. They
Okay.
didn't put in white oaks that lived to be 250 years old. They put in the silver maple. Look gets nice and big and dies at about 80. And so you have a nice huge tree, and this starts a lot of the tree is falling down, okay? And I'm not asking everybody to go out, and I would love if they would identify their trees and learn how long they live. But that's a big problem for a town that's been around. We haven't been around a long time, not like Hartford, okay? They have a different set of arboreal problems, but we definitely have, we're at the end of a lot of these early neighborhoods, and our trees are suffering. And very much the electrical requirements about front yard trees have changed a lot, and that factors into the equation too.
Yeah, it's different front yard and backyard, right? Backyard more privacy or
Larger shade requirements.
Yeah.
Power side of the street in the front, non-power side of the street, two different requirements.
Yep.
If you're on the power side, 30 feet is kind of the max limit, but there's a lot of beautiful native trees that can go out there. But what's happening is when the big one comes down, it's replaced with grass,
Right.
not with any
But
tree
we'd
at
love
all.
to see it be replaced with a cherry tree or a plum tree or a crabapple tree, or, you know, even some of the smaller shrubs.
Choke cherries.
Do you have a favorite
So-
tree?
Oh, I do.
Oh, we all have a favorite tree. I think we have the same favorite tree.
Who wants to start? Favorite tree?
Black Tupelo, also called black gum. Scientific name, Nyssa sylvatica. I'll give you a brief bio. It lives for 500 years.
Nice.
You've seen them. They're native to Connecticut, but you didn't notice them unless they're in the fall when they're a scarlet color.
Okay.
Not red maple, this is a scarlet color. They are cold tolerant, drought tolerant, and heat tolerant.
Tough.
You know, they last 500 years.
500, yeah.
And they don't get that big. It's a 60-foot tree, 65-foot tree, grown in full sun. Grown in any, and it's also an understory tree that will grow in shade. So there's almost nothing. The only thing you could dislike about it is like the Yukon women, they win all the time. This is that
And there's
tree.
a beautiful example of a black tupelo in, where was the picture you took at?
Oh, Mascarillo's
Mascarillo's.
nursery.
Okay.
You know, in
Been
the
there.
back where you
Yep.
get your propane filled.
Yep.
There's a
You
beautiful.
wouldn't think of that as a particularly arboreal hot spot, okay? It's a beautiful black
Beautiful.
Tupelo there. Beautiful.
Send us a
Bill
picture.
took-
Send us
Bill
a
took a
picture. We'll put it
beautiful
on the
picture.
I
podcast.
shall, okay.
Yeah, I got to second the Tupelo.
Oh wow. All right.
Tupelo is tied with red oak for my favorite tree. The Tupelo supports a ton of pollinators. Tupelo honey is produced by bees who primarily feed on the Tupelo tree down in Georgia, and it makes the sweetest, best honey in the United States. So it's not just bees, though. The Tupelo tree supports all kinds of pollinators. The branching pattern is really cool. They're just, and the colors in the fall, as Bill said, are spectacular. On the same tree, you're going to see reds, oranges, yellows, and purples all on the same tree.
That's
It's
beautiful.
a
Yeah.
really interesting tree. And then, of course, the red oak, just because of the size and the shade and the majesty of it and the strength of the limbs, the branching pattern of the red oak. That's probably my favorite tree. Yeah.
Is either a book character or a movie character, Tupelo. Or a female character. I can't think of where and how, but it'll come
No,
to me.
Tupelo honey's the Van Morrison
Right.
love
Yeah.
song.
Yeah, maybe that's it. I'm a huge Van Morrison fan. Is it on the greatest hits?
It should be, okay?
Yeah, Cat Stevens and Van Morrison.
More
are my
people
guys.
know Van Morrison's Tupelo than know the Tupelo tree.
That's where I've heard it.
Yeah, that's true.
100%. Favorite
Helen,
tree,
what about yours?
Well, I'd have to go with a tie, but any kind of oak is awesome, especially for the birds. And the white oak, of course, is Connecticut's state tree. And we have a beautiful example of a white oak at the former Yukon campus up on the north side of town, Asylum Ave. And that's one of the charter oaks, we're told, that each of the towns received. But I think my favorite tree, the tree that I identify most with, is the tulip poplar, and it's a tall tree, it's tall and straight, and it usually is in a grove So if you see a tulip poplar by itself, it's a little bit more vulnerable because it has a wide leaf that catches the wind. But if there's a grove of them, then they work together to catch the wind, and I really like that tree. Richard Powers wrote a book called The Overstory, which is probably one of the best books I've read in a long time. And it really talks about people and their relationship with trees and trees' relationships to each other. So it's a wonderful book. It won a
National Book Award.
Nobel Prize, I think, in 2019 for literature. So
Nice.
you can think about what tree you identify with as well as what tree you like the best. So what's your favorite tree?
Mine? I want to show you a picture to figure out what Steve is. Steve's my favorite tree, but
Okay.
there's red oaks growing on me.
I'm a big fan of the sycamore too. While you're trying to think of what
Or-
Steve is,
Birch trees always
birches are awesome.
had like you could peel off the
The river birch with the
Yeah.
peeling bark.
Yeah.
Not the Nobel Prize, the Pulitzer Prize.
The biggest tree in the state is a sycamore. Sycamores are so
Yeah,
distinctive.
is that
They
over
have
by
Simsbury.
Simsbury?
right on
by
the Farmington.
Abigail's?
Right on the Farmington
Yeah,
River.
right by Abigail's.
Yep,
Yeah.
right before you cross the
They
bridge.
keep lights on it near the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful tree.
Beautiful tree, beautiful bark, wonderful branching.
Yeah,
Sycamore-
really
Is it,
distinctive.
is it the oldest
Yeah.
tree in Connecticut, or it's
One
Uh,
of. It's
They
it's
also
been
grow
tested.
really well in wet soil.
Yeah,
So you'll
and
see
that's
them
why-
along riverbanks, like you see willow trees, but those sycamores like wet soil, which we have a lot of in West Hartford.
And we have 17 of them left that have not been claimed.
get your sycamore trees?
About 450 years for the Pinchot sycamore. Pinchot
That's how
was
long
the
those
first
last?
Secretary
That's it?
of the
Just
Interior of the United
450?
States. There's a lot of trivia around this tree stuff. Okay?
Yeah, I love it.
And
We played Jeopardy a couple episodes ago. I should have set up a tree Jeopardy. Darn it. Missed
Next time.
it.
Plenty of good questions there. Like, why is Elmwood called Elmwood?
Ooh.
But let's not get into the elms right now. That's
We
a whole
could,
nother.
only because there's a beautiful example of an elm tree that didn't die in the Dutch elm disease that wiped out a lot of elm trees. There's a beautiful example on Arlington, on the corner of Arlington Road and Farmington Avenue. But there's also a couple
Yes.
at
the
Sedgwick,
Sedgwick.
Middle School.
Yeah.
And there's
Nice.
photographs that we've seen of Sedgwick Middle School from the 1930s.
1931.
And those trees are in the picture.
In the
and
front
they're
of the school or
still
the
there.
back?
Front. Right on the corner of Wardwell and Sedgwick is the
All right.
quote unquote Sedgwick elm, which is 100 feet tall, a little over 100 years old.
Wow.
And then a little further down the road, right by that circular driveway, is another elm
Did you
tree.
post a map recently, or you posted a map?
posted something
and
on
circled a
Facebook.
couple trees
Yes.
of this Sedgwick.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But what's remarkable
Wow.
is that they survived this
100 feet
terrible,
tall.
disease that wiped out. And we have been making an effort in West Hartford to plant some new disease-resistant elm trees. So you will see quite a few elms. About 100 of them have been planted around West Hartford. A lot of them in Elmwood for obvious reasons. But we do have them scattered around town. That happened a few years ago. So we're watching the fruits of those labors also.
Yeah, I used to live in the Elm City, and now I live in Elmwood.
There you go.
All about the elms. Maybe that's my favorite tree now.
Get you a disease-resistant one from your front yard.
Yeah.
A new Steve.
So I need a new Steve. So Elmwood is obviously the Elmwood trees, right? Or elms.
Named after the Burgoyne Elms, which were huge elm trees that were planted in the 1700s in honor of General Burgoyne's victory in the Revolutionary War, if I'm getting my
You're
history
pretty
correct.
close, yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yep. So they're magnificent trees if they can survive the Dutch elm disease. They grow really tall. They're the classic vase-shaped tree. They form these arched tunnels, or they used to anyway. Streets were lined with elm trees. They were absolutely beautiful,
So
but
sad.
we lost probably 80%, 90% of them in the 1930s.
I would say even more than that.
More than that, okay.
The only ones that survived were isolated. If you were connected, particularly underground, if you're connected to other elm trees, you died. Okay.
Yeah.
Because it passed it along, kind of, or
Yeah.
contagious.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's not something that flies from tree to tree. It passes through the root system and stuff. And I won't get technical on it, but yeah. So the ones that are still, like the one on Farmington, the two at Sedgwick, There's another one in Elizabeth Park. They're all isolated, right? Brings up an interesting question. When you're planting all these new elm trees, are you creating a highway for Dutch elm disease? Or are you, in most cases, they're planting an elm tree that they're hoping is more resistant,
Right.
okay? Because that's been
Yeah.
developed, and that's a smart thing to do.
Yeah.
But like
Diversity
with
is
trees,
very
no
important.
one knows.
Many different
Yeah.
ways.
You're rolling dice, and you never get to see whether it's a 7 or not.
That's a good thing about, good or bad thing about trees. You're giving a gift for the future.
Yep.
And as a teacher, we love the future. So I like it. It's all cool. I got to do a couple shout outs for some sponsors. I usually do this at the beginning, but I was so excited to get to our conversation. Number one, Direct Line Media, Kyle and Dave. They've been doing 72 episodes, so thank you, Kyle. Thank you, Dave. Our sponsors, we're here at Gastro Park at 637 New Park Road, so thank you. Keating Agency Insurance, Golf Law Group, West Hartford Lock, Fix IV, and Donut Crazy. Did I get them all? I always miss one. With our sponsors, so West Hartford Lock, what are 3 keys to being, we'll say, good at being the West Hartford Tree Project? What would be 3 keys that you find yourself doing? 3 keys for the West Hartford Lock.
I got one. It's definitely collaboration.
Yep.
It's all about collaboration. There's so many people involved in this, I actually wrote all their names down so I wouldn't forget anyone, and I know I have forgotten some people. So, for example, Tom and Rachel Martin are taking over the distribution portion this year of the seedlings. Sustainable Connecticut, I mentioned already. Eversource, people are passionate about trees. Do you know anyone who doesn't like trees? Everyone likes
Yeah.
trees. You do?
Like, I hate. No, I'm saying that's weird. Yeah, that's weird. How would you say, oh, I hate trees? Get rid of all the trees. I
No,
want more pavement.
Messy is the big negative that you'll hear about trees. We ran into that a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
When trees drop branches, it's part of natural growth and things, some people consider that to be like an invasion of their property, all right? And believe it or not, it's a driver for why people cut down otherwise healthy trees, because they're messy, okay?
Yeah.
And if they're fruit bearing, okay, plenty of stories of female ginkgo trees being cut down because
They smell.
people don't like the smell of the fruit. I think you got to get really close to
Yeah.
that fruit to see
I have a
how
confession. I have a
disagreeable.
confession. For 13 years, by my garbage between my neighbor and our house, I don't know what this tree was, but it dropped these green seeds or
Spikes on them?
key spikes. I don't know, but they attracted flies. They stunk, and it went all over my driveway. So I would trim it as much as I could off the driveway, and then finally and then it would start to lean on my neighbor's house because I kept trimming it, and then finally I said, neighbor, what do you think? It had to go. Does that make me a bad person?
So long as you plant 2 trees instead.
Okay.
That's
Exactly.
fine.
Thank you.
That will alleviate you.
That's the key right there.
Deal.
Yeah.
So I would agree, collaboration. I mean, we're, working with Ted and with Bill and Doug Jackson and John Phillips and Julian from Eversource. But there's a lot of different groups, including the West Hartford Garden Club that has been very active in removing invasive plants from the understory, cleaning out areas. The Friends of West Hartford Parks, which is a natural outgrowth from the Friends of Fernridge Park. So now we're really getting involved with supporting and building stewardship in all of our parks. So I would really like to say that collaboration, but I would be remiss if I didn't remind everyone about right tree, right place, because that's sort of our mantra.
I love it. Yeah, right tree, right place. We get all the shout outs. We got everyone. I didn't hear you mention your wife's name. Come on, man.
Mention my wife?
Yeah.
Carolyn.
Carolyn
did you
Gerner,
say-
yeah. She's very
Give her a
shy.
shout out. Give her a shout out.
So most of the ideas where I can't remember how I came up with the idea originally, it's because she came up with the idea originally. So probably this goes back to Carolyn's original idea to do this, and now we're doing it. And she doesn't want the limelight, but she's got some pretty good ideas.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Carolyn. She's a good friend.
And one last shout out is to some of the teachers and to Bob Palmer, who's in charge of plant services for all of our campuses. We have some pretty spectacular trees on our school campuses. We were doing a teacher CIT the other day, and someone from Notable Trees came, Marty Aligata. He came to talk to us a little bit about trees, and he looked over across our soccer field at Sedgwick, and he's like, those pine trees, we got to measure those guys. He went over and he measured one, and it is the biggest. When you measure height, circumference, and spread, it's the biggest white pine in all of West Hartford. So now it's on the list, it's on the website as the most notable pine tree, and that's on a school
Marty
campus.
just saw that out of his eye.
He just saw it. But we're
Amazing.
so used to just driving to work, and we just ignore all the
Yeah,
trees
head
that
down.
we see on a daily basis. But there's some pretty spectacular trees.
And a lot of those teachers remarked that for the first time they were actually looking around at trees instead of, on their way or to work, or looking on their campuses and becoming familiar with what's there and things that they never noticed.
We've got some spectacular trees in some of our cemeteries as well.
That's true.
Fern Cemetery, spectacular. Yeah.
I love how not many towns, you're like, what neighborhood do you live in? We do it by elementary school. Is that common? Or is it a West Hartford thing?
I don't know.
I don't
Where I
know.
grew up,
I'm
we
not
didn't
sure.
do, we had like names of the neighborhoods. But every time someone, where do you live? Wolcott District, Aiken, Duffy. It's funny that West Hartford
Yeah.
does that. What school, are you in West Hartford?
Yeah.
What school district?
Duffy.
What school district?
Brayburn.
Morley.
You guys still all know that's all. Wolcott. Wolcott neighborhood.
No kids, Morley.
That's right. Well, that matters too. So collaboration, one key. Did we get all the shout outs?
I believe we did. Well, I mean, the donors, this year we had 60 plus donors, very generous, who gave us $3,000 that was then matched. Volunteers. Every year we have volunteers that help with bagging, distributing, and then the very next day on Sunday, those trees that aren't picked up, we plant them somewhere.
Yeah.
And that takes labor, but it's
Yeah.
fun. It's fun labor. So there's probably 20 volunteers that I could
True
go down the
story.
list.
We have pictures.
And you have a focus of trout brook, right? For leftovers? Or no? No?
Not so much.
Look around, see where.
So we do it, with our Public Works Department and Leisure Services, between the two, we sort of come up with a list of areas in various parks that either have some room or have an area that's begging for trees. But we want to make sure that these seedlings are put down in some place that's a little bit protected so that they won't just be mowed over or something like that. So the Trout Brook Trail is a little different because it's part of the flood mitigation, so we have to be very careful about how far away from it. We can't really plant in it, but certainly along the streets nearby, that
Gotcha.
would be a factor, sure.
Yeah, there was some discussion that we are going to plant that next section that hasn't been built yet from Fern up to
Duffield.
Asylum. It's possible we might be doing some planting there. It's a pretty long stretch. That's a quarter-mile stretch. So, yeah.
Well, this is very exciting. I'm learning something new. I'm a lifelong learner. As a teacher, I tell my kids or my students, we try to learn something new every day. So this has been a very enlightening podcast. So thank you for coming on, Bill. Thank you, Ted.
Thank you, Eric.
Helen.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Like true teacher fashion, you gotta share some books here. Can you hear the trees talking? If you
Nice.
could talk to trees, what would you ask them?
The guy that wrote The Secret Life of Trees.
Peter.
German
The
German
Hidden
guy.
Life of Trees? Peter?
Holding,
Yep. Wait,
German.
Can you hear the trees?
Peter
The Hidden
Wolins.
Life of Trees. Yeah, it's your
when he
fingers are
says
over
it,
it.
he says it differently than.
Oh,
And
okay.
I don't know if you heard of this one. The Giving Tree. You ever
Of
heard of this
course.
one?
Yep. Heard of it. Haven't read
Shell.
it.
Yep. So we have fiction and nonfiction. You guys know the difference between fiction and nonfiction?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, these are great chapters in the table of contents. We could maybe turn it into a trivia game, but I thought it was very interesting. Do trees have babies? Was very interesting. Where was it? Trees have babies. Oh, so, how do trees make babies? Do they have grandparents? What do tree children learn at school? Can trees talk? It's just really catchy and interesting for young readers or adult readers, but I wanted to share that I thought this was a great book. Do trees sleep at night? Who's the best tree detective? How do trees breathe and drink? And why don't trees fall over? And what do trees do for us? We answer like
A lot of those
5 of the
questions.
Quite a
7
few of
right
those,
there.
yeah.
It's a great job. So I want to share my book suggestions. Classic book. What do you think about this one that this little boy just continues to take and take and take from this tree? Is he being a good friend to the tree? Is he part of the West Hartford Tree Project?
I have to admit, I don't know the story, so I know.
Eventually, he becomes part of the tree project.
The tree or the,
Yeah,
the boy?
The boy becomes part of the tree project.
Yes. At the very end.
I will
Spoiler
share
alert.
with you that of all the trees that have ever been on Earth, we have cut half of them down as a civilization.
Oh wow, that's a
So
mind-blowing
statistics.
fact right
For
there.
hundreds of millions of years, they were around and there was nobody to cut them. So we've done a very, very good job in the last couple thousand years.
To only cut
And that's
down
part
half.
of the urgency. We see it in our community, which in many ways is a blessed community going through a transition due to climate and building back in the 20s and 30s and 40s. But this reforestation is really, really important thing, and that's why we want to recruit that young guy
Nice.
and his sister to plant trees
Yeah, and everyone
for
else.
their entire lifetimes.
Half of the trees have been cut down. That's harsh.
Sobering.
And the Lorax, that reminds me of the
Yeah,
Lorax, another
sure.
classic tree book. Man, I dropped the ball. I should have brought that one.
Dr. Seuss. Yep.
Dr. Seuss. And there's a book, Our Tree Named Steve. So I read that to the girls, and that's what started it. So we were like, let's call ours Steve. So we stole it from a book. But I went to the librarian, and I'm like, hey, do you have this book, Our Tree Named Steve? She's like, no, but I got these two. So here we are. Anything else? Closing remarks, recommendation. You want to switch topics? Maybe a book recommendation, podcast, TV show.
So the guru these days about restoring the environment in suburbs and cities, his name is Doug Tallamy, and he's written a book called Bringing Nature Home. And it's about, basically, we don't need grass lawns everywhere in the suburb. That's a monoculture. It's probably not even a native plant. We need to start replacing a lot of our grassy lawns with native plants that support pollinators. So Doug Tallamy, Bringing Nature Home, I think is like the Bible these days for
Nice.
what we're trying to do.
I'm going to put that in the shout out section. What is it? Doug Tallamy?
Doug Tallamy, Bringing Nature Home. And he's all about having your own little forest in your backyard.
Yeah, there's like a no mow August or something. No mow
mow
July.
May.
No
I
mow
think.
May, yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
It
Really
makes
should be
sense
no
that there's some
more,
alliteration,
no mow,
but
yeah.
no mow May, like no shave November.
Well, and they're also finding out that rather than mowing your lawn weekly, that if you mow it every other week, there are much more benefits accrued to the environment. Okay, now, occasionally you go 10 days in the summertime and it's raining, your neighbor might stop by thinking you're not home and mow it, okay? Again, it's this, it's part of our culture. You know, a postage size, lawn, emerald green, plenty of pesticides and fertilizers on it, and huge amounts of water, okay?
Keep it going.
And that's the dream, okay? There's so many wrong
We need
things
new
of,
dreams.
of that
Yeah.
Yeah.
with that dream.
Yeah.
And the trees, part of our mission is part of the larger mission of pollinators and woody plants and plants. So that's why I think that both of them answered collaboration, and I would have said education, which is just a different way because education leads to collaboration.
Right.
And there's an awful lot of people beyond, further along than us, working in all of these different areas that are valued members of our town and are making our town better. And that's a cool thing.
Yeah. And if you want to get educated, again, the tree planting workshop at Westmoor Park on Saturday, April 1st, 12 to 2 with Ginny. It's going to be great. She's from the North Central Conservation District, and I'm going to try to make it.
Yeah,
Oh,
people,
sign up,
if
sign
people
up for
can
that.
sign up for that
Oh,
first.
sign up on
Yeah.
the Google
Yeah, there's a
Doc.
Google Doc on our Facebook page because we don't want to have 100 people showing up if
Sign
we
up,
only have
please.
50 parking spots.
And then April 22nd, you'll pick up your trees. Again, sign up. There's some trees available. We'll share the link. Again, a wonderful podcast. Episode 72. Thank you, Helen, Ted, and Bill. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Exactly.
We talk trees with Helen. Bill and Ted. All right,
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Eric.
So we do a game night. Hold on. Whoa. We're all teams here. Now I'm going to have to pin you against each other for a quick game. Because on Wednesdays at Gastro Park, it's game night, right? 6 to 9, all day happy hour. We're going to play a little game called Incoherent. This is a
Okay.
family edition. There is an adult edition, which gets a little interesting. But there's a word here. It's called Incoherent. It's the game of gibberish. You're going to read the word out loud so many times it'll start to make sense. We'll play first to 3, and there's a prize. First to 3. I'll give you a clue. So,
Okay.
all right, let me see. Look at some that you'll get here. That was a good one. It was started off. All right, here we go. All right. So if you sound out that word, you read it out loud. That's when you'll start to get it. And there's 2 hints. So it's a talk out loud game, a think out loud game, because that's when it gets funny.
We're all doing this at the same time.
When someone has a lot of money.
Filthy rich.
Billy
Boom.
Rich.
All right. So we're gonna next time I flip it up, you're just gonna holler it out. All right.
Go
get-
as colon.
You getting that?
Go as colon.
So yeah, it's good when you say it out loud. All right. It's the school joker.
Class clown.
Helen. All right.
Water balloon-fied.
Water balloon fight.
Helen is killing it.
Helen's
Now
killing
we're
it.
We're playing more than 3.
Well,
No
if you
fair.
say it out loud, then it's easier.
Yeah, you're helping, but it's great. Keep going.
Right tink to puss.
It's big and yellow.
Right tink to puss. Right tink to puss.
Sure. When no one else can or wants to drive you to school. Riding the bus.
Oh,
All right,
right.
point Kyle.
All
There
right.
you go, Kyle.
Do a couple more.
Listen who your art.
These are words of wisdom. A safe choice when you don't have the actual advice.
Listen
get.
to your heart.
Yes, Ted.
Ooh, I got one.
Other than Helen.
Lionel Messi. Lionel Messi.
Ted on a roll. Now.
All
Let's
right,
go.
I'm coming back here.
Listen to your mama.
Good job.
Shawn
Shawn
Mendes.
Mendes. Shawn Mendes.
I don't know this guy, but he sings.
Shawn Mendes.
Hey,
Hey, Bill
Bill
got one.
Gleason, big Shawn Mendes fan over there. Oh. All right.
Birthday cake. Birthday cake.
All right.
Gotcha.
We're going to stop. Last one, if you can tie it.
Hide and seek. Hide and seek.
Ties it. So we tie.
Got it. I think we tied.
All right, we'll tie. You guys are both winners.
It's a draw.
Yay.
I
No fun intended.
I got 4.
That's played at Gastro Park, game night, gathering game night every Wednesday, 6 to 9. We're here at Gastro Park. Thank you for being our host. Thank you, Dave and Kyle. Thank you again to the West Hartford Tree Project. It was wonderful chatting with you. Next episode, Carlos Muta. Did I say that right? Muta at Parkville Market. So be on the lookout. Great talking with you guys. Learned a lot. And we're gonna help plant some trees.
Good deal.
Great.
Thank you,
Excellent.
Eric.
Right.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Yes.
And then good. When's the best time to plant a tree?
Yesterday.
Yesterday. Today or yesterday.
Our best time is April 22nd when we hand them out.
Yep.
That's true.
Happy
Good.
spring. It's a beautiful podcast. Well timed. Great guests. On 3, we'll say be a good friend. 1, 2, 3. Be a good friend.
All right.
Welcome to the Feeney Talks with Friends podcast, hosted by Eric Feeney. Eric is a founder and president of Friends of Feeney, Inc., which is a local grassroots, community-based nonprofit organization. Their mission is to help children and families who need assistance after heartbreak and tragedy. Eric uses his podcast, Feeney Talks with Friends, to talk to wonderful people in the community who are doing great things because we're doing great things. First of all, we'd like to thank Dave and Kyle from Direct Line Media for making all of this possible. Then we'd like to thank our podcast sponsors, Gastro Park, The Fix IV Therapy, Keating Agency Insurance, Golf Law Group, Donut Crazy, Weehaw Brewing and Roasting, and West Hartford Lock. Be a good friend and subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and any other streaming service that hosts podcasts. Please check out our website at www.friendsoffeeney.com and learn how to support, volunteer, or become a podcast sponsor. Be a good friend. Pick up trash, hold the door for someone, give a compliment, and be charitable.